This channel is not designed for entertainment or viral content. It exists for people who are actively healing, seeking clarity, or exploring the psychology behind their emotions and patterns. Every episode is carefully written and produced with emotional depth, reflection, and care. If you're here expecting casual commentary, high-energy hosts, or non-AI content as you think we are, then we gently refer you to other channels offering just that, often covering topics like how to get a girlfriend or what to do when the world is falling apart as mental health content. At DeepDive, our work is different. It's quiet, deep, and intentionally crafted to support those on a real mental health journey. If that's you, then welcome to our channel. You're in the right place.
Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are plunging into a topic that's, well, fundamental to who we are, but maybe more surprising than you think. Memory. You probably think of your memory like a perfect recording device, right? Like a mental filing cabinet.
That idea is super common, the sort of mental video library. We rely on it.
Yeah.
But the science, neuroscience, psychology, it paints a really different picture. Memory isn't just hitting play, it's an active reconstruction.
Reconstruction. Okay, what does that actually mean? I thought it was just pulling up a fact.
It means every single time, seriously, every time you remember something, your brain isn't just finding the file, it's rebuilding the experience.
Rebuilding it.
Yeah, and it uses more than just the original event data. It layers in how you feel now, where you are now, your beliefs, even a bit of imagination.
Wow. Okay, so it's not a fixed snapshot, it's more like an edited version that keeps getting updated.
Exactly that. Think less file retrieval, more like assembling a story.
Yeah.
And the story gets influenced by how you feel today, your current perspective.
That's fascinating.
And that's what this deep dive is really about. Understanding how the brain rebuilds the past, how things like emotion and trauma really shape recall, and importantly, how knowing this helps us navigate our own memories with maybe a bit more care.
Giving us that shortcut to being well-informed. And hey, if you find this kind of exploration useful, do consider subscribing or leaving a comment. It really helps others find these deep dives.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's jump right into that core idea. Memory isn't replayed, it's reconstructed. What's the mechanism behind that?
The key concept, scientifically, is something called memory reconsolidation. It's kind of counterintuitive.
Okay.
When you recall a memory, bringing it to mind actually makes it temporarily unstable, malleable.
Unstable, like fragile.
Kind of, yeah. For a short window before your brain saves it again, it's open to being changed, modified.
Wait, so my thoughts or feelings right now could actually tweak the memory before it gets stored again?
Precisely. As you're accessing it and then resaving it, so to speak, it can get nudged by new info, your current mood, different surroundings, whatever's going on.
Ah, okay. That feels like it explains something people often wonder about. Why do my memories seem to change over time?
Exactly. It's not a bug, it's a feature. The brain's doing this constant updating process, integrating new experiences.
So it's not faulty, it's just dynamic.
Right. And this dynamic process leads directly to another phenomenon, one that can feel a bit unsettling: false memories.
False memories. Okay, that sounds serious. Are we talking about, like, delusions?
No, not typically. The sources are clear. This isn't usually about lying or some major mental break. False memories are often a natural side effect of that reconstruction process.
How so?
Well, your brain really wants a complete story. It doesn't like gaps in the narrative of your life.
Right.
So if there's missing info or things are fuzzy, the brain unconsciously fills in those blanks. It uses inferences, maybe details from similar events, expectations.
So it's connecting the dots, but sometimes it grabs the wrong dot.
That's a great way to put it. It's building a picture, but it's an interpretation, not a perfect photo. And some things make it more likely to fill those gaps inaccurately.
Like what?
Things like suggestion. If someone strongly suggests something happened a certain way, that suggestion can get woven into your memory. Also, being in really emotionally charged situations, seeing images or hearing stories similar to your own experience, or even just repeating a belief or narrative over and over, all these can contribute.
So you can end up vividly remembering something that didn't quite happen that way, or maybe not at all.
Yes. Studies have shown people can form quite detailed false memories, especially when there's suggestion and strong emotion involved.
Wow. That really makes you think about how impressionable memory is.
It really does.
Which brings up that tricky question. How do I know if I'm remembering or imagining? If they use similar brain networks, how can we tell?
Yeah, that's a key point the sources raise, because recall and imagination use overlapping circuits. The feeling can be very similar.
So what do we do?
The guidance often isn't about obsessing over perfect factual accuracy for every single detail. It might be more helpful to notice how the memory feels in your body, what meaning it carries for you now.
Focusing on the feeling and the meaning, not just the facts.
Right. The emotional truth or the felt sense connected to the memory might actually be more significant and more accessible than nailing down every objective detail.
That's a really different way to relate to our past.
It is. And speaking of feelings, emotion isn't just, adding color to a memory, it's actively shaping it.
Shaping it. How does it build the frame?
Emotion acts like a highlighter pen for experience. When something triggers strong feelings, fear, joy, shame, whatever your brain flags it as important.
So intense emotions make memory stickier, harder to forget.
They definitely increase the odds of encoding and recall, but here's the crucial part. That emotional flagging skews the memory.
Excuse it.
Yeah, it prioritizes the emotional high points, the feeling of the event, over a neutral, objective recording of everything that happened. The memory gets organized around the emotion.
Yeah. Can you give an example? Like, how would that play out?
Sure. The sources mention things like maybe you had a conversation that was objectively pretty neutral, but if you were feeling really anxious during it, your memory might latch on to perceived threats or negative tones, remembering it as way more hostile than it actually was.
Okay, you can see that.
Or, say someone did something kind for you, but you were deep in grief at the time. You might barely register it or forget it completely because the grief overshadows everything else.
Right.
Or think about childhood memories. An event might feel heavy with guilt in your memory, not because of the objective facts, but because of the intense feeling you had as a kid, which now frames the recall.
So the emotion is the lens you remember through.
Exactly. It's not just coloring it in. It's determining which parts get kept in focus and how they're connected.
Okay, so if everyday emotion shapes memory that much, what happens when the emotions are totally overwhelming, like during trauma?
Well, trauma dramatically disrupts the normal memory process. When your nervous system gets overwhelmed, totally flooded, the brain's usual way of organizing information just changes. The hippocampus, which handles narrative memory, the story of what happened, and the amygdala, the emotional processing center, they function differently under that extreme stress.
How differently? What does that do to the memory itself?
Well, instead of storing a smooth chronological story, traumatic experiences often get stored as fragments.
Fragments, like pieces.
Exactly, scattered bits. You might have vivid recall of certain sounds or smells or maybe flashes of images or intense body sensations, but they're disconnected. They don't form a coherent sequence.
That explains why someone might have big gaps in their memory of a traumatic event or feel confused about the order of things.
Precisely. That fragmentation can lead to feeling lost in time, unsure if something really happened, or feeling like parts are missing.
And what about flashbacks?
Right. It can also lead to those emotional flashbacks, where you suddenly feel the intense emotions, the terror, the helplessness, or the physical sensations from the trauma flooding back, even if you don't have a clear visual picture of the event itself.
That sounds terrifying.
It is incredibly distressing. But, and this is crucial, the sources really emphasize this point. This fragmentation isn't a sign of weakness or a broken brain.
Oh.
Often, it's an adaptive response. In moments of absolute terror or overwhelm, breaking the experience into pieces might be the brain and body's way of surviving it, of shielding consciousness from the full, unbearable impact.
Wow. That's a powerful reframe. So for someone with trauma history, that question, can I trust my memories, gets really complicated.
It absolutely does. And the sources offer a nuanced answer here. You can trust that your feelings are real. You can trust that something significant, something impactful happened. The emotional truth, the somatic truth that's valid.
But the details might be fuzzy.
Exactly. Because of how trauma messes with encoding, the specific details might be fragmented, out of order, blurry. So the focus shifts. It's less about verifying every tiny fact and more about acknowledging the profound reality of what your system went through.
Trust the internal reality, even if the external story is patchy. That's significant.
It creates a path to validating the experience without getting bogged down by the lack of perfect recall. And there's another key thing influencing what memories surface and how they feel, which is our current state.
State-dependent memory.
Yeah.
The idea that how I feel now affects what I remember from the past.
Exactly that. Your current emotional state, physical state, even physiological state, it acts like a retrieval cue.
Can you give an example?
Sure. If you're feeling really anxious right now, your brain is more likely to pull up memories that also have anxiety, threat, or danger associated with them. Your current state resonates with similar past states.
So, conversely, if I'm feeling calm and safe, I might remember that same event but maybe access different parts of it, or it feels less threatening.
Precisely. The sources point out that the very same memory can feel profoundly different depending on whether you're accessing it while feeling dysregulated and unsafe versus feeling grounded and secure.
Huh. So the brain is always trying to match the present feeling with past data.
It's incredibly context sensitive. It uses your present state like a filter for the past. Understanding this isn't about saying your memories aren't real.
Right.
It's about recognizing they're dynamic, they're connected to now. And it encourages us, hopefully, to be a bit more curious and gentle with our memories rather than just reacting rigidly as if they're these fixed, unchanging things.
Shifting from rigidity to curiosity. I like that. And it feels like this understanding naturally leads into, well, practical things we can do. Ways to work with our memories, especially the tough ones.
It really does. And the sources offer some really helpful, gentle tools to support clarity and ideally find more peace around memories. The first one is about journaling.
Okay.
But journaling with context, not just content.
Meaning
Yeah.
going beyond just writing down what happened.
Exactly. When you write about a memory, or even just a current experience that feels linked to the past, don't just describe the event. Also note how you felt then, or how you feel now remembering it.
Okay.
Jot down any body sensations, tightness, warmth, shaking, stillness. Explore the beliefs you had about yourself or others in that moment. What was the environment like?
Why is adding all that context useful?
Because it helps you see the patterns over time. You start noticing how specific feelings or body states or core beliefs are tied to how you remember certain things.
You can spot your own biases or shifts.
Right. It helps track emotional influence, maybe see how your perspective has changed. You're mapping the internal landscape alongside the external event.
Contextual journaling makes sense. What's another tool?
Particularly for people dealing with trauma, the sources suggest using gentle memory hooks.
Gentle hooks, meaning not jumping straight into the most painful part.
Exactly. These are prompts that are less likely to be triggering, designed to help access those memory fragments more safely, piece by piece.
How does that work?
Instead of pushing yourself to recall the worst moment, you might start with something peripheral, less charged. Ask yourself things like, what color were the walls in that room? Or what was I wearing? Or were there any sounds or smells that weren't part of the main threat?
So you're kind of circling the edges first, building a container.
Precisely. It lowers the risk of overwhelm and re-traumatization. It helps you gently build a more integrated picture over time without forcing yourself past what your nervous system can handle right now.
That answers that question people might have. Can I improve recall without triggering myself? Gentle hooks sound like one way.
It's one suggested path, yes. Focusing on the periphery can feel safer.
Okay. And building on the state-dependent idea, what's next?
Practicing nervous system regulation. This is absolutely fundamental.
Regulating your nervous system. How does that help with memory?
Because, like we said, your current state dictates so much about memory access and feel. If you're stuck in fight or flight or freeze, you're much more likely to be flooded by intense, fragmented emotional memories. And you'll have less access to the parts of your brain, like the prefrontal cortex, that help you reflect and make sense of things.
So calming yourself down actually helps your brain process the past better.
It creates the internal safety needed for a more integrated recall. When you feel safer in your body, you can shift from just reliving the memory in that triggered state to being able to reflect on it with more perspective. The sources mention simple things, grounding, like the 5-4-3-2-1 technique.
Naming things you see, hear, feel.
Exactly. Or mindful breathing, focusing on a slow exhale. Or just somatic awareness, like putting a hand on your chest or belly and noticing the sensations without judgment.
Tools for the present that change how we meet the past. Got it. And the last tool.
The fourth one involves a really core shift in the questions you ask yourself about memory.
Okay.
Instead of getting caught up in, did it really happen exactly like this? Was it factually true? The sources suggest shifting the focus to your experience. Ask questions like, what is my experience of this memory right now? How does this memory feel in my body? What might this memory be showing me about what I needed back then or what was really going on for me?
Moving from being a detective trying to prove facts to being a compassionate witness to your own inner world.
Beautifully put. Exactly. It honors your emotional reality, your felt sense, without demanding this impossible standard of literal, perfect accuracy, which, given reconstruction, is often unattainable anyway.
Yeah.
It shifts you from fact-checking to witnessing your truth with kindness. And this loops back to why memories change. They reflect an evolving inner landscape, not just fixed external events.
That feels freeing.
Yeah.
Taking the pressure off perfect recall, focusing on meaning and feeling.
And this is exactly where understanding memory as dynamic, as reconstructive, actually becomes a powerful doorway to healing.
Yeah. A portal to healing. How can something so changeable be used for healing?
Because of that malleability during reconsolidation, it means memories can be updated with new insights, new emotional experiences, through things like therapy or safe relationships or even just conscious reflection. When you revisit a difficult memory from a place of greater safety or understanding,
Yes.
that new perspective can actually get integrated into the memory trace itself when it's resaved.
Wow. So the update process isn't just about distortion, it's also about integration.
Yes. The sources talk about memory reconsolidation breakthroughs.
Yeah.
These are moments where recalling a painful memory happens alongside a new corrective emotional or cognitive experience.
Like what kind of breakthroughs?
Things like revisiting a childhood memory and suddenly realizing, oh, I wasn't actually bad, I was just terrified. Or looking back at a relationship and seeing clearly, that wasn't love, that was about control. Or feeling compassion for your past self. Wow, I really did the best I possibly could back then.
Those feel like huge shifts, life-changing almost.
They can be absolutely transformative. These shifts can literally change the emotional charge tied to the memory. They can reduce trauma symptoms, help heal old attachment patterns, and fundamentally reshape your inner story about yourself and your life.
So reconsolidation is both why memories shift and the mechanism for therapeutic change.
Yeah, that's a key takeaway. It's the brain's own capacity for updating that makes healing from the past possible. Recalling the old pain in a new, safe context allows the new insight to overwrite or dampen the old distress.
That's incredibly hopeful, leveraging the brain's nature.
It absolutely is. And this is a really important, but working with difficult, fragmented, or traumatic memories can be really hard. It can be overwhelming.
Yeah, what if these tools aren't enough? What if trying this stuff alone feels too scary or confusing?
The sources are very clear on this. If exploring your memories brings up significant distress, makes you feel lost, or just feels like too much, seeking professional support is crucial. It's a sign of wisdom, not weakness.
Are there specific kinds of therapy mentioned that are good for this?
Yes, they highlight approaches specifically trained to work gently and safely with fragmented or painful memories, aiming to avoid re-traumatization. Things like trauma-focused CBT, TFCBT, somatic experiencing, or SEEMDR, which stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and internal family systems, or IFS. These models understand the nervous system and memory fragmentation.
That's really helpful to know there are specific supports designed for this. You don't have to navigate it alone.
Absolutely not. Skilled support provides safety, guidance, and expertise that can make all the difference.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, what's the big picture insight from this deep dive into memory?
I think the core message is that memory isn't this static monument carved in stone. It's more like a living mirror.
A mirror.
Yeah, a reflection that's constantly being shaped, not just by facts, but profoundly by our inner world, our emotions, trauma history, our current state, our need for safety, the meaning we make, all of it.
So it's less about demanding perfect factual recall.
And more about understanding this fluid, ongoing process and what it reveals about us. And by approaching our own memories, even the really hard ones, with that gentleness and curiosity we talked about, we can start to reclaim not just lost stories, but maybe lost parts of ourselves.
It sounds like a path to self-discovery, finding resilience, maybe.
It really can be. And perhaps the most powerful final thought from the sources, something to really sit with, is this. You don't actually need perfect recall to heal.
You don't.
No. What you need more is presence being here, now. You need a sense of safety, whether that's internal or through support. And you need a willingness to just gently listen, to listen to what your body and mind are trying to communicate through the echoes of the past.
Presence, safety, and willingness to listen. That completely shifts the focus from fixing the past to healing the present. Thank you. This has been incredibly eye-opening, really changes how I think about my own inner world.
A world that's always being rebuilt, always offering new pathways, if we learn how to approach it with care.